I'm going to go over the overhead press movement and some of the most common faults that I see in the movement, as well as just important considerations if you're dealing with pelvic floor dysfunction, urinary incontinence, prolapse, any of those types of symptoms, and how can we still do this movement safely and strengthening our pelvic floor rather than putting a lot of excess force and making things worse. So when we think of the overhead press movement, when we go for that press, that's where I see the most common faults, is that when we go to press, your pelvis and spine start to really end up super extended. So our butt kicks back and then we're really extended through the spine and our abdominals are really lengthened out. And if we think about it from a pelvic floor perspective, our pelvic floor and our diaphragm are now like this. They're not sitting on top of each other. So managing pressure, the pressure that builds when you're doing the lift, makes it a little bit harder, and that might be more excessive force down on your pelvic floor. So first tip is to use your breath. So as you're going for that lift, let's say you're below your 1 rep max, below 80% or so, exhale as you're pressing the bar overhead. That alone is going to reduce the amount of pressure that we're trying to manage. The other component is thinking about keeping your ribs stacked over your pelvis. So instead of ending up here at the top, we want to bring and breathe those ribs back down. So I'll show you the first way I was talking about and what often happens, especially when we're pushing a heavier weight. Should I get out of the way here? So as I go to press, and even at the start, sometimes people start in this extended position. So their belly's out, pelvis is tilted, and then we go to press, spine is extended, and we end here. Right? We don't have that stacked posture. I can already feel a lot of compression on my low back when I do that. So outside of just pelvic floor considerations, that's going to bother your low back and your spine. Okay? So instead, I'm going to use my breath. I'm going to set up in a stacked posture. So small bend in my knees. I'm going to stack my ribs over my pelvis right away and then use my exhale as I press and try and return to that stacked position as quickly as possible. So it looks like this. So as I set up here, I'm not letting my pelvis tilt. I'm going to stack. Small bend in those knees. Ribs are stacked. And now I'm going to exhale. Start with an inhale on here. Start my exhale. And when I finish my ribs, I breathe them down, right? We were here. Bring it under. Not here. Bring it under. Now we don't want to clench the glutes, but breathe those ribs down and find that stacked posture. Back down. Again, inhale, I breathe into my rib cage, into my back. My core is tight. I press overhead. I don't clench my glutes, and I return to that stacked position. Okay, so that requires coordination and control of those obliques, of those lower ribs, as well as good awareness of your lower core and your deep core muscles, making sure we can contract them and find that stacked posture without clenching the glutes and being able to kind of bring yourself there a little bit more naturally with your breath. So those are some tips on how to optimize overhead press and some faults to watch for. Again, especially if you're trying to improve your pelvic health and just your overall strength.